I'll keep my remarks brief, and I was asked to come and talk a little bit about the election results and what happened and where we sort of go from here. First, just let me say to those of you who were involved in the election, thank you for your participation. Thank you for getting out and participating, which was clearly one of the great wave elections, certainly midterm elections in certainly the last century. I was elected to the United States Senate in 1994, and that was a wave election without question. But I would suggest that this was a different wave, a wave that was a bigger wave, and one that I think, unlike 94, which resulted in a Republican House and Senate, but also resulted in 1996 re-electing Bill Clinton, I think this wave is going to be a different kind of wave. And let me explain why. Another thing that was in my bio is I was a member of something called the Gang of Seven. Now, I was a member of the Gang of Seven before most of you were born, or at least many of you were born. That was back in 1991. I was involved, 1991. I was involved with 6 other guys, including John Boehner, the Speaker of the House. And there was a report issued by the General Accounting Office. It's a report that had been issued every, I think, 2 years for the past 20 years. And the report said there was this institution called the House Bank that members of Congress had deposits there and had checking accounts. And that bank was running a pretty shoddy operation that actually had members have negative balances in their checking account, and were using this bank as sort of their own private loans and slush funds without having to pay interest or anything else. Well, for 20 years, every 2 years, this GAO report would come out and talk about the bad practices at the House Bank. Someone would raise a fuss about it, and then it would go away, in large part because the Republican and Democratic leaders at the time said, make it go away. And this was something that was a bipartisan, turning a blind eye to something that was certainly not proper for members of the House to do. Well, there was a group of us, 7 of us, who decided to take on not just the Democratic Speaker of the House, but our own Republican leadership. Now, why do I mention this? Well, it was a bloody time. It was a time when members of Congress were found kiting checks, in other words, bouncing checks, in some cases hundreds of them. One member who happened to die in office owed over $250,000 to the House Bank when he died. And we were able to, over the objections of our leader, a guy named Bob Michael at the time, over the threats from both Democrats and Republicans to me and to my political future, and more from Republicans, I would tell you, than Democrats. We were able to stand up there and went to the House day after day, went to the floor day after day after day, and demanded that the names be released and this practice stop. Now, why do I say that? I say that because that turned out, 1992, that all broke loose late in 92. It did not have much effect on the 92 elections because it broke late. And the districts were sort of set. There weren't a lot of great candidates. It was an election year, which was a presidential year, and it sort of overshadowed it. But it became a huge issue in the 94 elections. Corruption was the huge issue. Everybody here, you're told when you talk about the 94 election that it was the contract with America and the Republican Revolution. Contract with America wasn't drafted and put in place until about 6 or 8 weeks before the election. Most members didn't run on it. I was running for the Senate. I didn't run on it. No senator ran on it. It was a House document, not a Senate document. What was happening in 1994 is that people saw the House of Representatives being in Democratic control for 40 years, and they saw a place full of corruption. There was also the House Post Office scandal, which landed the indictment of the House Ways and Means Committee chairman. Well, we sort of know what that's like with Charlie Rangel going on today, but this was a criminal indictment, and Dan Rostenkowski, who was probably one of the most powerful men of the age, ended up going to jail because of us, because of our willingness to stand up. And after we did the bank, we did the post office, and so this serial corruption led to a negative wave about incumbents, particularly Democrats. Throw on top of that Bill Clinton and some of the things he tried to do but failed. Bill Clinton tried to pass a health care bill, failed. Try to put gays in the military, failed. Several other things, had some controversial appointments, we know what that's about. But by and large, Clinton failed in everything he wanted to do. So the '94 election was about corruption first, and policy sort of second and third, but far down the line. That's not what happened in this election. This was an election about Americans recognizing that the country that they believe, my father's an immigrant to this country, I can speak in those terms. The country that my father and my grandfather came to, and the reason they came here, was at risk. A country that believed for the first time in the history of the world, and this is a revolutionary concept that I don't think we grasp as Americans. Barack Obama likes to talk about that we are endowed with certain inalienable rights. He leaves out a sort of important word in that little recitation of the Declaration of Independence. That we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And the reason that's important is because our founders understood. You hear a lot of talk about first principles of American democracy and American exceptionalism. What does that mean? That means that our founders understood, for the first time, that rights come from God and are given to every man and woman in our society. And then they are inalienable. They are natural. They come to you because you are. And that the government's role is to respect those rights, protect those rights, and is limited in nature. And it does not have the role to give out rights. Why? Because rights that are natural come to you. And those are the only rights. Now, government can pass programs, but as far as rights are concerned, the government is not the bestower. Now, why was that revolutionary? It was revolutionary because prior to that, our European ancestors, of which we are born, did not look at the world that way. They were countries full of emperors and kings. And those kings and emperors were given rights, divine rights. They were given rights by God to bestow on their subjects. And the subjects were there to serve the sovereign, as opposed to the government serving the people. Now, we and Americans, and probably you in this room, take this for granted and don't even think about it. But it was revolutionary. Never been done before. And it changed the world. That's why America is exceptional. Because for the first time in the history of the world, we had a group of people that said, in government is going to believe in you. Is going to allow you to pursue your dreams and rise to the highest heights, not because the king said you can, not because he gave you property or gave you a business. It's because God gave you talents and energy and will, and you use those for yourself and your family, your community and your country. And America changed the world.